Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast.
Hello and welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Hannah Quinn Mulligan. Coming up on the show this week, farmers get angry at a beef protest outside Agriculture House in Dublin.
We need an immediate price rise. We've seen right throughout the summer they've dropped their price by the equivalent of 80 to 100 euros a head. At the same time, our chief market in the UK, taking over half our beef, has increased their price by a similar amount to the farmers.
And beef farmers weren't the only one getting their placards out. The IFA Pig Committee showed up outside Carroll's Ham in Tullamore to demand they stop importing Belgian pork.
All our farmers will be all checking the shelves in every supermarket at the moment, and we can't just single out one supermarket over the other. We'll be checking every one of them.
But first, some of you might remember that back in July we wrote that low-cost loans, promised in last year's budget, would not materialise until 2019. To which Minister for Agriculture Michael Creed told the Dáil,
"I don't always believe every headline I read in the Farmers Journal."
Well, Minister Creed told the Agricultural Oireachtas Committee this week that low-cost loans will not be available until 2019. Details have yet to be finalised, but here's a clip of Minister Creed from the Oireachtas outlining what we do know.
We got 25 million and we are working with a number of strategic partners to deliver a product in the area of capital investment, and I've outlined the detail of that, as in unsecured borrowing. And it's important that we compare like with like. We're talking about unsecured borrowing over a period of 8 to 10 years, both of which are not available currently at a competitive rate. And what we are envisaging in the context of those two parameters, to have a product that would be available at less than 5%. Now, that is not in the marketplace at the moment, and particularly if you are a young farmer or a new business, food business, that availability of unsecured borrowing is not available. And the unsecured will be up to 500,000, I think, is the cap, and a minimum borrowing of 50,000. That's the parameters of the new product that we would develop. Now, people say, why isn't the product in the marketplace already? Well, we delivered earlier in this year, through SPCI as well, a €300 million working capital fund for the SME sector, of which 40% was ring-fenced for the for the agri-food business. So it wasn't until we got that product out into the market that we were ready to engage with SPCI and a number of other partners, including the European Investment Fund, to deliver the current product. So I accept that in the context of the announcement last year, here we are, the money we've secured will be paid over in terms of securing the availability of the fund, but the product won't be in the market for drawdown until the start of the year. But the detail of it are available now, and we will work with the remaining steps that need to be taken to deliver it to marketplace.
Minister Creed there. Some ministerial humble pie might be in order, but I think the real bitterness comes from farmers depending on a loan scheme that never materialised this year. Well, farmers weren't beaten on all fronts, and they were out in force this week protesting low prices at the beef forum outside Agriculture House in Dublin on Wednesday. President of the IFA, Joe Healy, spoke to our correspondent Thomas Hubert at the protest about factories taking advantage of farmers.
Number one message was for the factories that they can't expect farmers to keep supplying cattle and keep supplying beef at below the cost of production. We need an immediate price rise. We've seen right throughout the summer they've dropped their price by the equivalent of 80 to 100 euros a head. At the same time, our chief market in the UK, taking over half our beef, has increased their price by a similar amount to the farmers. Second message was a very clear message to the Minister. We need support for the suckler cow in next week's budget. This sector underpins an industry worth $3 billion to the Irish economy. Without support, it's not going to survive. So next Tuesday is a crucial day in that. And finally, to the Taoiseach. It's a very simple message. It's not all about Dublin, Taoiseach. And I think we can include the Minister for Finance in that. There's an Ireland outside of Newlands Cross. There's an Ireland beyond the Red Cow. And there's a population and a group of farmers that have stood to Ireland through thick and thin. In the time of the bust, the Irish agricultural industry continued to grow its exports. and they were the bedrock of rural society. We need the government to appreciate that, and next Tuesday is Judgment Day for them. Farmers in rural Ireland will decide on the way they vote in the future based on what comes out of next Tuesday's budget.
Is it still time to hold this protest and have this message? I suppose the government is ready to deliver its budget now. Are we still in time to put pressure?
Look, this today is only another step. We have been at this, and we've in our budget document, the €200 per suckler cow is chief. It's our top priority. So we've been at this for the last 12 months. We've met with the Minister for Finance already. We've met with the Minister for Agriculture already. We've had our lobby days already, where we've had over 100 TDs, ministers, senators come in, and they've been lobbied by every one of our counties. So this is just another step along that road, and it was very clear today the depth of feeling amongst the farmers for the need for support for Irish agriculture and rural Ireland.
Finally, you had strong words about the Beef Forum not delivering and having being a talking chap for a long while. Is this the end of the Beef Forum?
Well, unless it changes tact. I've continuously said for a number of years I actually haven't attended the last 2 or 3 Beef Forums because as President of IFA I'm too busy. There's too much work to be done than to be sitting down around a table that, as I said, is to say it's a talking shop is probably overstating it. It's really a PowerPoint presentation shop because there's 2 hours, and when you take the PowerPoint presentations out of them, there's only a couple of minutes for speaking. We had an agenda today that didn't even acknowledge, and we wanted to get farm incomes and beef prices on it. So there's no point in being in around a table that hasn't delivered and that doesn't show any promise of delivering for Irish farmers. As President of IFA, I won't be part of a group like that, and that's why we're outside it today. If it changes tact, we're always open to change, and if we feel that there's potential there for delivery for Irish farmers, we'll get back around the table again.
Joe Healy there. As mentioned in the intro, beef farmers weren't the only ones to protest in the last week, and pig farmers, who have seen incomes drop by almost 50% in the last 12 months, were at Carroll's Ham in Tullamore last week protesting Belgian pork imports. Given the recent outbreak of African swine fever in Belgium, farmers were particularly concerned that imported pork could bring the disease into Ireland. Our reporter Barry Cassidy was there and spoke to IFA National Treasurer Tim Cullinan and IFA Pig Committee Chair Tom Hogan.
So look, Barry, why we're here is that I think we're all very aware at this stage that there's a serious crisis in the pig industry. Farmers are losing anything up from 15 to 20 euros per pig at the moment. To date, we've lost about 7,000 sows. If this continues, the Irish pig herd is going to be decimated. And the reason we're here with Carroll's today is we're on a journey with the entire industry, primary, secondary processors and retailers. We're looking for support from everybody in the industry to support us by using as much or 100% Irish pig meat, which in turn will help to drive the price that farmers are receiving at Farmgate for pig meat. And that's why we're here at Carroll's this morning.
Because I suppose it appeared on Twitter that they were selling Belgian pork meat, and obviously there's concerns in Belgium at the moment over African swine fever.
Absolutely, there's huge concern. There's a lot of African swine fever right across Europe at the moment, and in particular, you're right, it's in Belgium at the moment, and we are very concerned. This African swine fever is in the wild boar population, but there is a risk that it could get into the domestic herd, and the danger there is if it gets into the domestic herd, and if that pig meat is coming into Ireland, there's a very serious risk that African swine fever could break out in the domestic herd in Ireland. And as you're aware, we have serious contracts exporting pig meat into China, and if we were to contact African swine fever here, all of those contracts would be in jeopardy, and we cannot afford that risk.
And I suppose we had a strong showing here today of pig farmers outside, and they agreed to a meeting. You can tell us what happened at that meeting?
Absolutely. We had a number of pig farmers that gathered here this morning because we were going to have a protest here. But in fairness to Carroll's, they invited us in. We had a very worthwhile meeting with Carroll's, and Carroll's have committed to using 100% Irish pig meat for at least the next 6 months, and will be reconsidered at that stage. They are using a cooked meat packet of Belgian meat, Belgian cooked ham. They've agreed that they're going to change that within the next 6 weeks. That'll be Irish as well. So, look, I would have to say with the meeting with Carol's today, an excellent outcome for Irish pig farmers.
I'm here with Tom Hogan, Pigs Committee Chairman. Tom, can you tell me what's happened here today at Carol's?
We had a very positive meeting with Carol's. There was obviously a few pig farmers here that they were absolutely concerned about the importation of the Belgian meat, and obviously worried that maybe that Carol's weren't doing all Irish. In fairness, we had a very positive meeting, as I said, and we got assurances from Carol's that if the product coming in from Belgium, if there was any possibility that it would carry the virus, it was going to be discontinued absolutely immediately. And they have given a commitment that over the next 6 weeks they're going to get the product, source the product here and have it 100% Irish. And they have given us a commitment that all pork going through this for processing in this factory for the next 6 months is going to be 100% Irish. And they've given us a commitment that we'll review it after that. And I would have known John Cunningham while he was in Mitchelstown years ago, and it was a very positive and amicable meeting, and we have to compliment Carol's the way they were so positive with pig farmers, and they said it was in their interest as well as ours to they have as much interest in Irish farmers being Irish pig farmers, as I say, being viable, because we need each other. And it was a very positive meeting, as I said.
Yeah, I suppose you've seen over the last while now that pig farmers are under pressure. We've seen protests in the likes of Musgraves. I suppose pig farmers just need that support.
They do, yeah, and I suppose, look, I think we have to go away maybe from talking about Musgraves as such, because I think we're absolutely targeting every retailer, that's carrying product that's not Irish, and all our farmers will be all checking the shelves in every supermarket at the moment, and we can't just single out one supermarket over the other. We'll be checking every one of them.
Now, if you're a mart goer, you'll be well aware that the weanling trade is well underway. Beef editor Adam Woods chatted to Clare Mart manager Martin McNamara about how trade was going.
Martin, you have a very big sale out here today. October, generally a very busy month down here in the west of Ireland. How many Weanlings have you out there in the yard today?
There's over 800 Weanlings today, Adam, in the yard, and numbers are only coming, they're 6 weeks behind time really. A lot of calves were light, and farmers are only showing the calves now, so we would expect October and November to be busy, because August and September generally has been quieter than normal.
General trade out there, what are you looking at?
There's two trades really, Adam. The top class Weanling is a fine trade, especially that bull Weanling, that farmer's Weanling, as I'll call him, 320 to 380 kilos. He's a flaking trade, he's making from €2.50 up to €3 a kilo, and for a real nice shell in cases that happen out over €3. Second grade calf, then you're back at a different league. You're at 230, 240 a kilo for that second grade calf. And again, it is a farmer trade, and you have a small bit of export activity for that very light 220 maybe to 250 O plus grade Weanling bull, but he's only something along 2 to 220 a kilo.
General mood of sellers out there, I suppose, has been a tough year. Maybe not hit as hard in the west as they were in the east, but general mood of your suckler farmers out there today, what is it like?
I suppose it would have improved marginally over the last couple of weeks for a number of reasons. A lot of people were thought to be complete doom and gloom in relation to stock. Trade is better maybe than expected for the good quality, and the fodder situation is not an issue, I would say, in the west of Ireland at this stage. That there seems to be plenty of fodder collected last week, and as I said, the good top calf is holding up well. There is a bit of despondency in relation to the polar calf, and the lack of the Turkish market, which was there last year, is a huge loss for that type of animal.
In terms of buyer activity, are you seeing the same amount of activity this time of year as last year, I suppose? Is buyer confidence good at the moment?
Has improved. I was at the Tullamore show and talking to people that they weren't going to be in the position, or they wouldn't buy cattle. A lot of them in the Himete that they have bought cattle at this stage. A bit slower to come out. There's a small bit of worry in relation to Brexit, especially for people that would be feeding those forward cattle with a view to killing next spring. there's a bit of hesitancy there, all right, but people that are buying the younger cattle are in it for the longer haul. So uncertain times.
I suppose we're here today to launch Mart Bids, a new Farmers Journal app in partnership with a number of marts. You've been involved since the very beginning. Tell me, why did you get involved in I suppose, building the app and developing the app with the Irish Farmers Journal?
I suppose it's like everything moves on. Technology is a key part of any business nowadays, and with a younger generation of people coming, you have to be able to adapt and give them information. I suppose what we see about the app at the moment, it's what I call a very good catalogue. As to say, you can walk overhead the cattle, you can pick out cattle, identify whether the type of cattle that will suit or whatever, and there's a lot of facilities within the app at the moment, and hopefully it's more information out there at their fingertips.
So you hope to, I suppose, it's going to help customers, it's going to help sellers, and it's that younger generation and about involving them in the mart process going forward.
Correct, and they can see what cattle are making without being in the ring, and if they have a fancy for an animal, they can look up after to see what that animal and things like what they made, and hopefully it'll develop further, and that it'll be a potential maybe to bid for cattle over the phone or internet in the future.
There's possibly a wee health and safety element too, in that I suppose you can look down across, you've every animal catalogued, you can pick out your lots before you're not walking down through the mart and looking at every animal in the mart. You can pick out maybe the lots that suit you first of all.
Yeah, there's an element of that, and especially here in Innis where we have the overhead gangways, you can identify animals, you can check on your phone the details of this animal without contacting the office or thing, and you can add him to your list or you can take him out of your list, whichever you want. So it's handy from that. You don't have to see the animal at ground level until you're actually bidding for the animal.
Stay tuned, because still to come we have driving farm efficiency in Portlaoise and a look ahead at the upcoming report on climate change and agriculture.
Lakelands and Lakepatrick merger details finalised. In this week's Irish Farmers Journal, we analyse the impact on farmers north and south ahead of crucial vote. Farmers boycott beef forum to protest low prices ahead of make or break budget. Cattle EID tagging could cost farmers over €2 million. Monaghan's McKenna family receives prestigious National Milk Quality Award. More buyers for quality weanlings with prices on the rise. And we have a supplement providing a comprehensive overview of breeding inside this week's Irish Farmers Journal, on sale today.
Now, with the farm population ageing and issues such as Brexit and Mercosur down the line, the future of agriculture has never been quite as important. Our correspondent Tommy Moyles spoke to Minister Michael Creed in Ballyverney at a Muskerry Mochra na Firma event, and started by asking the Minister if farmers would be happy with the budget next week.
I'm amazed at this story around the underspend. I mean, what the department has to do is to make provision against our contingent liabilities. And if, for example, under TAMS, if those liabilities don't materialise, it's not an underspend. It's not something that we can unilaterally decide to spend elsewhere. It's a provision against a liability, and those liabilities carry over. So will the funding for our commitments under TAMS. So on the budget generally, because you're aware, I mean, I'm bound by cabinet confidentiality, but I do recognise that it has been a challenging year for farming.
The fodder incentive scheme that was brought in earlier this year, has there been much of an uptake on that? Or
my understanding is, that there's been quite a substantial take-up. I think in the region of 20,000 hectares, maybe over it. I don't have the exact figure to hand now. And in fact, our knowledge as well on seed sales would suggest that outside of the scheme, there's been quite a lot of crops sown by farmers themselves, not in the tillage sector. So that, I suppose, and maize silage harvest, and the current inclement
I suppose the last few weeks have.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of activity there now. So I'd be quite satisfied that the gap is closing further. And there will be areas, please God, if we get a benign enough winter, and if we can get all of October in terms of outdoor grazing, there's a substantial chance that we can get through this.
It's obviously going to be to the front rather than the back of people's minds, though, given what we've experienced in 2018.
Oh well, look, I mean, if we get a winter like we got last winter, and bear in mind this time last year there were cattle in a lot of places. Ground conditions are quite good now. There's a good chance that if we get a normal winter, that we could be have through the endeavour, I have to say, of all stakeholders, including farm organisations, through their endeavour we have come through this,
And obviously we require to be vigilant and remain vigilant.
You were speaking during the week in Austria on generational renewal in farms. Where do you see opportunities to try and improve that in, I suppose, a European and an Irish context?
Well, the point I was making, and have made at a number of council meetings, is in terms of generational renewal, it's an issue right across Europe. We're aware of it here in Ireland, and certainly in the most income-challenged farming areas, livestock and sheep farming, and to a lesser extent tillage. The age profile reflects the lack of economic opportunity there. And if we are to be serious about addressing that issue, all of the incentives that are there for young farmers are important, but the most important signal we can send out is by having an adequately funded CAP. That's a signal that says Europe is serious about agriculture as a future and about incomes of farmers where incomes are challenged. So it's tied into what will be the ultimate budget for the CAP. At the moment, we are not happy with that.
You're working actively to try and improve that situation?
Well, we are, but bear in mind there's a requirement for unanimity. Even as late as later this week in Dublin, I had an engagement with all of the EU ambassadors in Dublin on matters to do with CAP and Brexit, and there are still quite strong signals from those countries, the Dutch, the Danes, the Swedes and the Austrians in particular, that they are still resistant to increasing their budget contribution.
Now, according to the Environment Protection Agency, agriculture is the biggest contributor to carbon emissions in Ireland, with the rising dairy herd and cows in general earmarked as the main culprits. With farming firmly in the hot seat, correspondent Thomas Hubert spoke to Professor John Fitzgerald, chairman of the Climate Change Advisory Council, about the advisory's upcoming government report on agriculture.
We are concentrating on agriculture over the next 6 months, and we'll publish our conclusions probably towards the middle of next year. Agriculture is different from other areas of climate change in terms of the gases that are emitted, and the science is different. In carbon dioxide, we know, and what we've committed to doing is basically having no net emissions of carbon dioxide, or getting down to effectively that by 20, no greater than, say, the temperature in 1990 or something like that. So you define it so that you're not adding to climate change, rising temperatures. So that what that would mean would be that maybe livestock numbers, or the emissions from the livestock, which would be the methane, should not be above what they were at a particular point in time. That is one possible way of defining it, which would mean that you have a budget of methane that you can emit, and then it would be up to the agricultural sector to make best use of that budget. And for example, it could mean, because milk is more profitable than beef, concentrating more on milk, cutting back on beef, so that emissions of methane actually fall, but agricultural incomes may be in aggregate higher. And then land use, what do you do with the land that is freed up? Can you use it in ways which actually suck carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, in biomass, in trees, even in grass? Can you do something which will actually help offset the effect of emissions of other greenhouse gases? That's the kind of policy package. What you want is something which is there a possibility of a win-win where you leave the income of the agricultural sector unchanged or even higher, and deal with climate change? Is that a possibility? And we've got to explore that.
Does your research and the recommendations you're going to make include the non-financial cost of such changes, the changes in people's lives who've been relying on beef for generations, for example? How do you account for these issues?
If a policy is going to work, you're dealing with people. So just saying, this is the optimal, I could do it on my spreadsheet and say, this is the right answer for agriculture, but you and I know that won't happen. That people there are other objectives, there are other obstacles. So the policy measures that you put in place have got to take account of the complexity. And I've actually done work on biomass and forestry going back 20 years. And for example, if a farmer were to plant trees on his pasture, you'll never get the trees out. So also the trees may mature after you're dead. So why would you plant trees? So you've got to deal with a whole range of issues if you want to transition from what farmers are doing traditionally into a rather different mix. And it's not going to work unless you think about the people you're talking to.
Finally, there was a recommendation from the Citizens' Assembly to effectively tax emissions from agriculture as a way of reducing them. But you've spoken against this in a recent Orectus committee meeting. Why would you not favour this option?
If the effect of methane lasted forever in the atmosphere like carbon dioxide, then the right answer is a tax. But because methane has a much shorter life in the atmosphere, the damage it does is rather different. So what you've got to do is rather different. So I don't rule out using taxes as well as carrots in the agricultural sector. I think we've got to use a mixture of both. But I think as defined by the Citizens' Assembly, the tax would not match well with the objective, which should be there, as I said, on livestock, which is not getting rid of all livestock, but managing it in a better way, which reduces emissions.
Thomas Hubert there, ensuring that farmers won't be forced to part with their most precious four-legged possessions. Well, self-sufficiency can often be a buzzword in farming, but beef editor Adam Woods went to the farm of Liam and Jim Delaney just outside Portlaoise, where self-sufficiency is key to driving production.
Yeah, myself and my father Jim were farming about 180 acres, and we've keep 80 suckler cows, and we have about 70 acres of cereal as well. We grow our own winter barley and wheat for feeding, and then we have about 40 acres of spring barley, and we have a malting contract with Clonbia that supplies Heineken.
Your beef system is?
Our beef system is calf is a suckler to beef. The male animals are slaughtered 16 months and the females about 18 months. Carcass, we try to get our carcass weights about 400 kilos in the males, and then in the females about 320, 330.
Minister Michael Creed, Minister for Agriculture, is addressing a meeting tonight, an IFA County Executive meeting in Portlaoise, just in 20 minutes' time. He's just been here, walked the farm with you for the last 2 hours. In terms of what you discussed over those 2 hours and what you impressed on him over those 2 hours, what was the discussions?
Well, the main discussion was, like, myself and my dad here, we pride ourselves in being as efficient as we can. As I said, like, we do all our work ourselves. The vet is Dunny man that comes in here we pay every other job, combining, silage, hedges, everything we do it ourselves. So and we grow our own meal, as you say, we treat our maximum, we mix a small bit of molasses in through, and that's our finishing ration. Everything is done as cheaply as we can, and we're as efficient as we can inside our own farm gate, and still we're suffering big time, and we're struggling to meet ends meet, and even this year with the drought on top of it as well, it's just getting harder and harder every year. And I was trying to push home the fact that like, I'm 41 years of age and I'm a full-time beef farmer, and there's we're very few and far between full-time beef farmers at my age. There are even lads under 50. Like, it's just a dying trade, and it's very sad. Like, we all can't go into dairy farming, and it's just worrying for the future.
In terms of making money at the moment, $3.70 of a beef price at the minute, you're really struggling there to make a margin.
It's a waste of time. Like, that's equivalent to about 16 cents a litre for milk. So that just puts it into perspective whereabouts we are at the minute.
There were a number of calls tonight for the Minister in terms of introduced targeted supports. He's been hearing that all for the last, 12 months. How has those, calls been received tonight, or how did he say in terms of that support coming?
Sure, like, his big priority was the cap budget, is to maintain that, and there could be a 5% cut in the cap budget, and that was his main priority, to keep that, and I was making the point that it has to be directed more so to the vulnerable sectors, let it be the low income sectors, and so we all know what they are.
In terms of the future of this farm, in terms of without targeted support payments to the suckler cow, where does this farm go in terms of the next 5 years, next 10 years? Where do you see it going?
In the next 6 months, it could determine a lot between now and Brexit at the end of March. And like, we're paying for Brexit at the minute with our beef price at $3.70, and when it's going up in the UK. So like, if it's like, at the minute we're wasting our time at $3.70 kilo, and like, if it's not €4, $4.10 to break even, let alone not even to make money. And like, that was even proof up in the Newford farm up in Galway a few weeks ago, when they were losing money they weren't even able to pay 1 cent for labour. So like, and they're doing things absolutely by the book, 110%, everything done great, and still not able to pay 1 penny labour. So that's worrying for the future, even before Brexit. So to be honest, for the first time, and I've been always positive all my life, and try to keep going as best I can. It's very uncharted water at the minute, and it is worrying. I don't know.
Just finally, you farmed along with your father all your life. You have children coming on now. Would you encourage any of them to come along and farm alongside you?
Of course I would. Yeah, always. I'd love if one of my 4 kids would take the interest in farming and take it on. And like, that's why I'm working all my life, same as my dad before him. He's working all his life to pass it on to me, and try to improve it and keep it up to speed, and not run it down, keep it going, and have it in a better place for the next generation. And that's where I want to be. But I'd say at the minute, the beef price at the minute, it's just like a farm is like any business. It takes so much for maintenance. To stay still, it costs you so much money. And like, none of us want to be millionaires. Like, all you want is enough to live, not a high lifestyle, just the bare essentials. And I say our holidays this year is Trabolgan, and it has been for the last seven years, and happy to get away for a few days. But like, there's no fancy lifestyle, but it's just enough to pay our bills and to maintain the farm and improve it a bit. So like, I'll have to think, like my kids from 10 down to 2. I'll have to, at the minute, it's not too sustainable unless there is more support given, because as regards price, it's like the factories last week, they killed 38,000 cattle, and very hard to depend on factories giving a price when there's that much numbers coming at them.
Yep. That's Liam Delaney speaking to the Irish Farmers Journal just after Minister Michael Creed has toured the farm here in Portlaoise. Thanks very much, Liam.
And that's it for this week. If you didn't get a chance to share your thoughts with us last week on our podcast survey, you can still do so. Just go to ifj.ie/survey. That's ifj.ie/survey. We would love to hear from you. Remember as well that you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and you can download the podcast on Spotify and iTunes if you don't already do so. The sound engineer this week was Ferdy Mooney, and I'm Hannah Quinn Mulligan.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie and on iTunes every Thursday.